I think one of the things that I love most about listening is that it's preventative. Often when I'm doing a training, I say, how many of you feel like you're really, really good listeners? A few people will raise their hands, but not many. And then I will say, how many of you were trained in some capacity to be a listener? Now, there are those of us out there who are, those of us who serve in a helping way, counselors, social workers, coaches are all trained, like for a long period of time, to listen, and it's enough. When Jane and I wrote this training in positive discipline is steeped in this just from the very beginning. It's definitely about tools. It's about experiential learning. For me, there are a couple of structures that are in place so that even after the training, your team has an opportunity to continue to grow and model and develop the skills and practice the tools. And that is the team meeting process and also teams helping teams. Because I think we've all had the experience of doing a training and thinking, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. You get back to work, you're slammed with everyday life, and you tend to sort of forget to put in place the things that you were so excited about. So it's not just about creating a culture at work, it's about sustaining a culture at work, the long term.
So let's look at motivating teams in their environment, because now we have some challenges. It's a key leadership skill, as you have shared in your training. So how can leaders inspire and motivate their teams through positive reinforcement or encouragement, especially when there are challenges that might be happening, or maybe it's performance?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a huge piece of psychology to understand what truly motivates people. So I know from my experience that when there's a task to be done, people like some autonomy in figuring out how the task will be done. So that's one thing I know. And the next piece is they like mastery. So they like to be able to practice a skill long enough or practice at a task long enough to feel like, okay, I've got this. I can kind of take it to the next level. And the third piece that's really motivating to people is to understand how is what I'm doing impacting the larger purpose of either the team or the company? How does it play into the values? And how does it play into the goal? So again, understanding yourself and knowing what your strengths are and your weaknesses, but also as a leader, being able to empower your team by giving them some choice within maybe some boundaries, and also just helping them understand the bigger picture, because that's your job as a leader, but it's not necessarily the job of every team member.
We've been talking a little bit about some of the tools. What is positive discipline or empowering people based on?
Well, it's based on the psychology of Alfred Adler and then his student and eventually colleague Rudolf Dreikurs. So there's probably more research done in the areas of like schools and families. There's a lot of research being done now on basic Adlerian principles that Adler espoused, a century ago, and weren't necessarily attributed him or aren't necessarily attributed to him in current society. But still, it is a psychological approach, which means that the foundation of it is understanding what people need and the best scenarios and the most helpful arrangements for them to bring out the best. So, yeah, for me, it's the perfect combination of practicality and theory.
So you're speaking about the psychology of Adler, Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikurs, and communication, that connected piece. And I know you have this wisdom that I'm dying for everyone to know about. It's the effective communication piece. So effective communication is the core of leadership, and I appreciate how you bring that about in your training. And why is listening skills so crucial? And how could it cultivate that? How do we cultivate that listening skills if we're constantly used to listening and solving, which is something that I'm very familiar with?
I think we all are, Yogi. Yeah. It's, oh, golly. I feel so strongly about the listening skill. And again, let's go back. It's like, are we trained to listen as children? No, our parents expect us to basically come out of the womb knowing how and being able to value all the pearls of wisdom, right, that they share with us from the time we're really young. So training people to listen is a highly effective way to increase the skill. Again, we can't assume people know how. We know they don't. And I think one of the things that I love most about listening is that it's preventative. Often when I'm doing a training, I say, how many of you feel like you're really, really good listeners? A few people will raise their hands, but not many. And then I will say, how many of you were trained in some capacity to be a listener? Now, there are those of us out there who are, those of us who serve in a helping way, counselors, social workers, coaches are all trained, like for a long period of time, to listen. And it's enough. Sometimes if you just listen to someone without responding, it's a miracle because we're not used to it as human beings. So listening always comes first. And I think to your point, what we often do is we listen and then we think, okay, here's what I'm going to say next. Here's what I'm going to say next, which takes us up here and away from really listening fully to what the other person is saying. So it's huge in terms of problem solving. It's also huge in terms of problem prevention.
I definitely hear what you're saying, especially about like truly understanding the other person's need. So when you're here, how you're just basically thinking of solving the problem, but you're not truly understanding what the other person is trying to convey in terms of their emotions, what might be really going on, and that putting yourself in the shoe piece that you talked about earlier, like really empathizing, just really being in their shoes to see what might be going on for this person. What is it that they're really looking to convey? And that's a piece that I learned with my time with you, surely, and to the conversation that we have on a weekly basis as we explore these pieces. Because it's easy to sort of say, okay, I'm going to go back to my workplace and really try to listen and things happen. But that conversation, that constantly being in that experience, that someone saying, nudging, hey, what's going on? Or actually feeling, for me, when I've come to you or I've come to our groups and we have a conversation about something and someone says, Yogi, and I might have this big elaborate question in mind or a problem, and someone or yourself will say, I hear you. I think what you're saying is, and you might be feeling disappointed in this area. And it just really invites me, when that feeling felt moment, it really allows me to now get clear on what really I want. Because sometimes we come in and we're sharing and we don't even know what we're talking about. We know we have this feeling and all those thoughts are driven based on that conversation. To be able to feel heard. And that's interesting, because hearing and thoughts versus hearing and feeling, there is that little shift that we did.
Yeah.
That's impactful. And in our workplace, if we constantly hear with the heart versus the head, which is a practice thing, it's one of those things. And I really, truly enjoyed hearing your piece about how we kind of connect that together.
Thanks, Yogi.
Sometimes we as leaders are looking for change. I see another person, another leader that is really effective. We're communicating really well with their teams, and we in awe want to get there. And we want our team, maybe it be attrition, and now we are looking to shift and say, I'm going to change things around here. And I am going to do things differently so folks would like to be here. And we start doing fun things to motivate folks to stay. Let's talk about, in positive discipline, we're speaking about Adlerian psychology, the motivation, the behavior. And again, we're going back to the change topic. How can leaders really connect with their teams and create this environment that is cohesive.
So as you were speaking, I was thinking about times when I've been in that position, when I knew I needed to make a change. And you mentioned, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and surely that will improve things. And I think when we understand ourselves and understand a bit more of Adler's ideas, we understand that, yes, our thoughts and our feelings are really, really important because they drive our beliefs. And some of our beliefs, or most of our beliefs actually, started forming when we were quite young, when our brains were not yet rational, when we were taking in experiences that were happening, and we had thoughts and feelings about them that created this belief, and then we've continued through our lifetime to collect evidence to support that belief. So one belief might be, as a leader, I need to appear at all times to know what I'm doing. I need to be the boss. And I need to lead these people firmly, by telling them what to do. So until a leader examines that belief and is willing to take a look at that and maybe change the belief, anything they do isn't really going to be interpreted very authentically, because their team is going to know, you can take me out to happy hour all you want, but I still feel like when we get back on Monday, you're going to be the SOB you've been, forever. So belief, we have to, if we're going to change our behavior, it has to be belief driven, and we have to be willing to look at that.
If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, yogipatel.tte.com.